He was a prophet of God. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you guys all go to the next one.
Everyone, I am Edward Payne.
Shh.
Edward Payne is my name. I was born in 1832 in Warminster, England. It's a long time ago. And I'm related to all of you as your great-great-great-great-grandpa. That's lots of greats.
4.
Yep. Right up through Grammy Payne's line, straight up. So let me tell you, when I was born, my family was very poor. My dad made $1.67 every week as a farmer. Not very much money. So when I was 5 years old, who's 5? Almost 5. 6? 4? 6? Okay. So when I was almost your age, I had to go out and work for the family. And my job was to scare all the crows and the birds off the grain. And for doing that, I would get 1 penny every day. If I did a good job and kept the birds off the grain, I made a penny. So I did that for 6 years. And by the time I was 11, where's my 11s? Close to 11. 12? 11. So by the time I was 11, my parents sent me to the St. John's Episcopal Church. And the St. John's Church, I became a gardener. And I learned how to do gardening and weeding. And I kept talking with the church leader, the pastor, about spiritual things and about the church and how come our church is different than what Jesus set up in the New Testament. And he could never answer my questions. He just told me, keep weeding that garden. So I had to keep weeding the garden. So I did that for 5 years. When I was 16, I started a real job as a clerk at a drugstore. And I would check out people when they would come and get medicine. And I would help them. And so I learned a lot of things. I wasn't a doctor, but I learned a lot of medical, very important information. But after doing that for a few years, I decided it's time to leave home and go and make my way in the world. And everyone in England, when they did that, the place you went was to London. That was the big city. So I went to London and I couldn't find work. And I kept looking for jobs, I couldn't find work. I had a roommate in a boarding house with me. And one night we would always talk about spiritual things. And one night I asked him if he had ever heard of any church that had things set up like Jesus. And he told me, have you heard of the Latter-day Saint religion? And I said, nope. He said, they're the Mormons. He said, I used to be a member of their church, but I made some pretty big mistakes and they kicked me out of their church. But I know it's true and they have the authority and they have the truth the way Jesus taught it. So that really struck with me and I thought, someday I need to find out this Latter-day Saint church. Well, it still took a few more years. But when I was 22, I was now working in the coal mines. I was a miner in Staffordshire, England. And I found out that this Latter-day Saint Mormon religion was going to be preaching a little meeting in my town. So I went, and there was this man named George Powell. He was a missionary, but he was an older man. He actually had a few kids. His daughters were helping him as a missionary. And as he taught about the gospel, I knew it was true right away. I knew this is the church that I had asked about since I was a boy. So I got baptized right away. And after I was baptized, 1 month after I was baptized, I was ordained an elder and called as a missionary. Wow. I didn't know a whole lot about the church. I was scared, but I was able to go and preach right there in England to all the people that I could. And I had a brother baptized with me too. My brother Charles, he joined the church with me, but very quickly he stopped coming to church, and then he married a woman that didn't really like the church, so he never came back to church. I was the only one in my family of 6 kids that joined the church. But since I had nowhere to live at that point, Brother Powell, George Powell, the missionary, invited me to come move in with his family. This was very cool because Brother Powell had a beautiful daughter. Her name was Emma. And after moving in with him for 3 months, Emma and I got married. It only took 3 months to know we were in love, and she was the ripe old age of 16 when we got married. So we got married, and for 9 years we lived there with Grandpa Powell, is who we called him. And I worked in the mines for 9 years, but I had a contract, and the mines weren't paying me very well. But Emma and I had a happy life, and we had 4 children. But I realized what we really wanted more than anything was to go to Zion and move to America and be with the church in Salt Lake City. We just didn't have any money. So there were 3 guys that worked with me at the mines, and we realized in order for us to get enough money, we have to break our contract with the mine And if we do that, we'll have to move away. And so we broke our contract with the mine and sold all the stuff we had, every bowl, pot, chair, everything we had that Emma and I had accrued in 9 years of marriage, we sold it. And that gave enough money for just one of us to go across the ocean. And that was me. I knew I would go across the ocean and start working and then make enough money and bring my wife and children over later. And that's what I did. As soon as I got to New York City, which is where everyone came, sailed across the ocean, and in New York City there was a guy that said, we need coal miners in Pennsylvania. And I said, I'm a coal miner, I know how to do that. He said, great, I'm going to pay you $8 a day instead of $1.67 a week, right? That's a lot of money back then. $8 a day if you'll come work in the coal mines. And I said, I will do it. Because it was in the middle of the Civil War, and they needed a lot of coal. And so they were paying very well for coal miners. So I moved to Pennsylvania, a place called Fallsbrook, and all I could think about was I need to save up so much money and get my wife and kids over here from England because I missed them like crazy. In 3 months, I had enough money because I saved every penny, and I brought them over, and they arrived on Christmas Day. It was the best Christmas present ever. In 1863, in Christmas, they came over with Grandpa George, but they still didn't have enough money to bring Grandma, Maria Powell, George's wife, and her 3 kids. So half the family was still there, but my Emma and my 4 children were with me, and I kept mining, and life was good. A few months later, Grandma Powell came over with her kids, and when they got to New York, the church had set up a fund called the Perpetual Immigration Fund. And they said, we have money in this account to bring Grandma and all the kids straight to Salt Lake City. And Grandma said, oh, that's great. Let's write all the family in Pennsylvania and tell them let's all go to Salt Lake City right now. And they did. And so we all got excited to go to Salt Lake City, but the mine needed one person to stay behind to pay off all of our debts. I was the youngest of the 4 men there. So Edward, that was me, had to stay behind while all the rest of the families went to Salt Lake. And I made them promise, if you will go on without me, I'll pay your debts, but you need to take my wife Emma and my 4 children, and you need to take care of them. And the other family said they would. And Grandma and Grandpa Powell and everyone was there. So they went across the plains. While they were across the plains, my wife was able to notify me that our 2-year-old son Thomas had passed away. He was 2 years old, about as old as
Victoria.
She's 3, so even younger than Tori. And he was getting sick, and we didn't have any really good food, and all he wanted was a warm piece of bread. That's my little Thomas. He just said, well, can I please have a bread? And they didn't have any bread for him, and he died. And it was very sad. And the only thing that kept me going while I was back in the coal mines by myself was knowing that with the gospel, someday I would see my Thomas again. And so the other important and exciting news of before we left, Emma found out she was pregnant with her 5th child. So she walked 2,000 miles across the country with her 4 children and not me. And when she made it to Utah, and they did make it to Heber City, Utah, is where they stopped, she had a baby 2 weeks later. Aunt Becca was in here in the last group, and I asked her if she would like to have walked 2,000 miles across the desert being pregnant. She didn't think that was a good idea. But so my sweet wife Emma had a baby 2 months later, and now all I could think about was saving up the money and getting out with my family. They settled in Heber City because that's where there was still family people there that would take care of them. But it was now winter time. It was October, and it was winter, and it was cold. I saved all winter. They had a really tough winter. By the middle of the summer of the next year, I'd worked my way to Kansas, and I bought a big ox team with 2 big ox. I had never seen an ox before. And I didn't know how to drive the team, but a man was willing to pay me $100 if I could drive that team all the way to Salt Lake. So I said, I'll do it because that will get me to my sweetheart Emma and my now 4 children, a new one, even though one had passed away. So in September of 1865, after a few months of traveling across the plains, I made it, and I ran into the arms of my family in Heber City. it was a happy time because now we were all together. But again, another very, very cold winter, and we lived in a cave. We had a dirt cave was the only place we could live because we couldn't afford to build a house until the next year. Well, the next summer, we built a house, and we had a whole farm, but the grasshoppers came. Have you guys heard the grasshopper story? The grasshoppers came and ate every single plant that I had, and I lost everything. So the only thing I knew how to do was what? Coal mining. And it turns out in Park City, or what was Coalville at the time, but Park City, Utah now, they had coal mines and they needed miners. So we moved up to Coalville. And I was a miner for a few more years. And during that time, we had 4 more children. We ended up with 13 total kids. 4 of them died. Thomas died on the trail. 3 other kids, once we moved to Utah, were born and all died within a few months. But we had 9 children that survived and lived to adulthood. And my second oldest son, Harry M. Payne, he was born way back in England. He came with us across the boat. He is your great-great-great-grandfather and a very strong man. Really quick, after the farm and the mine in Coalville, I just wasn't making any money. We decided we were going to move to southern Utah to a town called Glenwood and have a farm down there and get out of mining entirely. And that's what we did. And once we moved to Glenwood, I was a ward clerk for 40 years of the Glenwood ward. And I passed away when I was 86 years old after having lived a full life and all my children strong in the gospel. And that's me. That's Edward.
Thank you.
Go find out about some other great ancestors because there's a lot of cool stories.
All right, represent great-grandpa